the two multi-year projects at Jadavpur University. She was Ford Foundation postdoctoral fellow at LBNL, Berkeley, USA. She was the IPCC 2007 Nobel Peace Prize winning panel and continued as coordinating lead author in 5th and 6th assessment cycles of WG3 of IPCC. She has been a chapter author of Global Energy Assessment, has been associated with the Eastern Review Report and many other global and national, subnational reports. She is the winning team of 2012 Prince Sultan bin Aziz Creativity Award for Water. She has published more than 160 peer-reviewed journal articles, authored and edited books. She is in the steering advisory committee of several national and international science policy interactive platforms and in editorial boards of many international journals. Her research interests are resource and environmental economics, economics of pollution and climate exercises for driving policy implications, water quality demand modeling, water energy, environmental services, developmental and environmental issues relevant for informal sectors, coastal ecosystem, service evaluation. She features in the documentary Juice How Electricity Explains the World, which explains among other things how developing countries are trying to bring people out of the dark and to the lights and transforming lives. এরকম একটা গুণী একজন অধ্যাপক জয়শ্রী রায়. I would like to request Dr. Professor Joyশ্রী Rai to deliver his speeches and present his papers.
অনেক ধন্যবাদ আমাকে এই অনুষ্ঠানে আমন্ত্রণ জানানোর জন্য এবং আপনাদের কাছে কিছু আমি বঙ্গবন্ধু চেয়ার প্রফেসর হিসেবে এশিয়ান ইনস্টিটিউট অফ টেকনোলজিতে যে কাজ করেছি তার খানিকটা অংশ পেশ করার জন্য। আমি হয়তো খানিকটা ইংরেজিতেই বলবো, আশা করি সেটা সবার কাছেই গ্রহণযোগ্য হবে। আমি আমার স্লাইড শেয়ার করছি এবং সেখানে আমি যেটা বলতে চাইছি সেটা হচ্ছে যে স্লাইডটা শেয়ার করি। But what we need with this same transformation, digital transformation, is also energy system transition or transformation. And what I'm going to discuss today is what are the challenges and prospects and opportunities. So instead of challenges, what are the prospects for Bangladesh for the energy system transformation? I have been inspired by when Bangladesh father of nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, talks about Golden Bengal. And Golden Bengal, and as an economist, when I look into the different components of it, this is nothing other than what in modern language we are talking about sustainable development. All its components, he talks about prosperous Bangladesh, he talks about happy people, that means their well-being, and also how to increase production. So for me, when we talk globally in IPCC reports or etc., where we are talking about prosperity and economic growth and how to deliver this multidimensional human well-being, and not only the economic growth, keeping within the planetary boundaries, it reminds me of Bangabandhu's sayings. And so the conceptual framing that we are doing for understanding how to make the well-being centric development progress, we are seeing that what we need to do is that we need to measure our economic progress not only by the GDP growth, but also we need multidimensional prosperity index that reflects constituents of human well-being like better nutrition, health, shelter, security, and so on. If we have been writing about this in many of the special issue journals, which are named as Bangabandhu Chair Special Issue, And also what we are trying to do is publishing these journals with a contribution from the scientists from Bangladesh. So these two journals, we have 70 academics from Bangladesh who has contributed their paper in this international journal, which is a peer-reviewed journal, 2 volumes. Also, I have been writing in many of the journals how Bangladesh is reconfiguring its progress and how energy reconfiguration is going to be, very crucial in this growth process. So the basic conceptual framework we are taking is that for human well-being, we not only need to build the physical capital like buildings, roads, etc., but also we need to build human capital. That's what I heard the minister was also saying. We also need the social capital, the community-based development process, which Bangladesh has its as traditional development process. We need natural investment in natural capital. That means how the Chor Island can be conserved, how water quality can be conserved, and how to build the knowledge capital. That's what we heard the minister talking right now, and the natural capital was what he meant about the environmental issues. So basically, this is what, if we look into Amartya Sen's way of thinking and Partha Dasgupta and Carl Goran Miller's thinking, then we know that they are saying that we need to make genuine investment. And genuine investment is something which looks into this portfolio of capitals where we need to make a mix match between all these 5 capitals, and the country need to decide what should be its investment pattern in these 5 capitals, because that will help building the resilience, which will protect from the disaster and the climate change. And these are also within the operational framework of Millennium Development Goal, the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, and the Paris Agreement, and also within the Sendai framework for disaster and risk reduction. So if we apply this framework, then what we are saying is that right now, when we are talking about GDP growth, we are only concentrating on only small part of our economic activity. But we are doing many more activities for conserving environment, but we are not looking into that and not including in the GDP. So we need a new economic indicator which considers the damage to the environment, loss and damage due to climate change, and also how the different activities, say for example, climate smart agriculture or adaptation investments, how these can be included in the GDP growth also. This should not be taken separately, but how they can be taken together. And these can, once we do that new accounting system, then we can have these sustainable development goals, how we are achieving, it will be easier to show. So basically what we are saying is that we need a new metric for measuring progress, and that's something under development under the UN system also, and we are contributing to that. And this is something which we really need to build capacity of the researchers also. And what a frequently asked question comes to me quite often when I had been working on the developing countries, and especially the global south, that in matters of energy, how far can a fast-growing Asian country like Bangladesh, who are graduating in this decade from their least developed country status, can replicate the growth patterns of the developing countries of Asia from the past century. So usually we try to think that, okay, what has been done in the past, can we replicate it? So fast-growing economy of this century are in great dilemma. And these are the research which we did with the Bangabandhu Chair Scholar, who was also with AIT. And we were trying to answer the question, when the GDP growth rate is going to be between 7 to 10%, how to grow differently? Why we are talking of growing differently? Because the domestic gas reserves are depleting, so we need alternative sources to meet the growing demand for energy services, which is inevitable because the economic progress and lifting people from poverty will be absolutely necessary. But if the gas reserves are declining, and if fossil fuel needs to be reduced use, then what happens to these skilled, trained human capacity which is already in the gas sector? And also, what happens to the whole asset and the infrastructure that is in the gas sector? So what mechanism, institutional mechanism, do we need for making a transition and going beyond the gas-based economy? So with this, what we try to understand is that basically there are multiple opportunities are emerging as multiple transitions are dominating the global discourse now. So the graduating countries from least developed country need to look forward and not backwards, and to not to see what others did, but what they can do differently and synergize multiple transitions for sustainable graduation. And in this context, one major is that climate conversation, where it is talking about how from high carbon to low carbon to zero carbon economy can be achieved. And that is one of the pillars of sustainable development. But this has enough opportunity for these new countries to actually look for new investment and make their energy sector more sustainable. And question comes that how to maintain employment and decarbonize at the same time. So there is a big debate about how to make this transition just. That means justice can be provided by protecting the jobs and the assets which have been created to meet the fossil fuel industry demand. But at the same time, we also need to lift the people from poverty and inequality. Are the financial resources available? These are the frequently asked questions which come up. So when we were looking into the Bangladesh economy, our first interesting observation was that if we look into Bangladesh, this mighty river dividing the country in such a way, in this side, right-hand side, all are the gas wells and gas-based resources, natural gas-based resources. And in this side, there is, so initially when the development process started from east side. And this side, because there was less connectivity, now we have got the bridge, but before that it was less connectivity, so there was less development in this area. But this area has more coal and more nuclear power. So now with the connectivity being created, there is going to be new opportunities for Bangladesh to connect this east and west, and there can be energy transmission lines which can be built. And so what we are saying is that how the different countries will emerge in the energy sector will depend on the local histories, local governance model, and local resource endowment. And that is something which is going to determine what should be the new infrastructure, what should be the new energy solutions for Bangladesh. And this map was prepared on my request by one of the professors from Jahangirnagar University, Sheikh Tawhidul Islam, and his team. And I'm really grateful to them for making this when I was discussing with him how to represent the geographical situation in Bangladesh. So what I'm just saying is that what we need some sensitive intervention points in Bangladesh in this decade so that some systemic changes in the energy sector can be made. So what are these sensitive interventions that needs to be made? As I said earlier, should we look back to other countries, how China, Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea in Asia developed during their fast growing phase, like what Bangladesh is doing now? My answer is that for the energy sector, we do not have any solution to them, because they were growing with more coal. China, look at China, they had coal-dominated economy. Look at Singapore or South Korea. They also had coal-dominated economy and the oil-dominated economy. Malaysia is oil-dominated economy. And for Singapore, it is oil-dominated, but all imported oil. But Bangladesh is in a much favorable position. So there is nothing that we really need to think that how the energy mix needs to be like the fast developed countries of past century in Asia, because Bangladesh has more gas, and this is domestic gas. This is extremely important to understand that whatever achievement has been made in terms of progress, much of it goes for the energy sector's contribution, where it is based on the domestic gas, which was not the case for many other countries. But what we also need to understand is that this was possible. It is rooted in, all our research shows that it was rooted in the Petroleum Act of 1974, which revolutionized the power sector and the energy sector in Bangladesh. And this was taken by the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And the most important aspect, which can be a model, which is actually a model compared to many other countries, and which I'm writing everywhere, that what Bangladesh did was, when they nationalized and wanted to distribute gas, they prioritized productive use of gas first over the consumptive use. So they energized the fertilizer industry, cement industry, and so those really moved the country forward through their food self-sufficiency and also the other industrial development in the garment sector and many other sectors. So one thing which we noticed where Bangladesh can learn through some international cooperation is that if we look into these three countries, South Korea during their fast growing phase was actually using more, for producing 1 unit of GDP, more energy. In Malaysia also, they were very inefficiently growing because they had more energy use and then the GDP growth. Bangladesh is doing much better than them in this century, but interestingly, China, Singapore, and India incorporated energy efficiency from the very beginning, and that made their production process less energy intensive. So that means with less energy, they can produce more GDP, which means that if we make the economy more efficient through technological intervention, then with whatever gas we have, we can produce even more. So increasing the productivity of gas. So energy GDP ratio means productivity of energy, how it can be increased. And that can be increased, all past history shows that through technological intervention. So that is one of the areas where Bangladesh can do a lot, so that we do not need more energy, but we need more technology to make energy more productive. And also what we need to understand is that global market is changing. The market realities are becoming such that solar PV, wind and geothermal, all of them are becoming even more cheaper. And as they are becoming cheaper, the gas and coal are becoming more expensive. So we need to be looking into the market, what new opportunities are emerging. If we look into the global market, which wrote in this time we wrote in the IPCC report, we see that how photovoltaic prices are declining, how onshore wind prices are declining, how batteries for passenger electric vehicle are also declining. And you need to understand that electric vehicles are more efficient energy-wise compared to the gas-based and the oil-based transport sector. And also, if we look into this, so globally, actually many countries are taking disadvantage of the market, cheap availability of the energy, and that's why this is the how growth in photovoltaics, how onshore wind is growing, how battery technology for passenger electric vehicles are increasing. And we need to, these developing countries need to take advantage of these. And for these, it is just not only the transport sector or energy sector is needed, digitalization is extremely important. I'll come to that very soon. So what we also try to do is that we try to understand that what are the barriers for renewable energy penetration in Bangladesh. We interpretive model we used, and then we tried to see that what is the barrier. So we identified the barriers and which ones are more. So we need more skilled human being. We need more institutional capacity. We need some policies which can boost these changes of renewable energy penetration. We looked into the energy efficiency improvement. As I said, energy GDP elasticity value that has to improve. Again, we see that there is a more trained manpower needed to take forward these changes. And also there is more technological benchmarking, policy and regulatory mechanism are needed. So these are the technology development internally, R&D are needed for making this to happen more. And also we looked into what are the barriers for advancing. Why is it not picking up the pace at which we want for the modern energy access? There also we find that information gap is major limitation. So we really need a very good database to make the decisions properly. So with all these, what we try to see is that for Bangladesh, actually it's not only the gas-based sector or the supply side. There are, in the IPCC report, it is showing that how in the new century we are getting even more technological advancement on the demand side, and how in each of these sectors there are several granular technology development are happening, and which has close link with the digitalization and which can take forward the economies on sustainable development path. So what we wrote in this IPCC report is that suppose if we are looking only in the supply side, then suppose we are saying that so this much of energy, greenhouse gas emission needs to be reduced in the food sector. This much of emission needs to be reduction in energy sector. But everybody is thinking that this is something they need to work on the energy supply sector, how to decarbonize the supply sector. But we are trying to show that it's not true, because we can reduce the burden on the supply side so that we can include new infrastructure. Say, for example, the infrastructure can be such that the industries can recycle their waste, and that if the recycling material is used more rather than virgin material, then the industries become more energy efficient. If we have more long-lived products produced, then there will be industry emission reduced. So there are several ways which we have identified in the IPCC report which are applicable for Bangladesh. We have seen that if we make the public transit system much better, as the Dhaka metro is coming up. So if the public transport system is made more comfortable, people can actually be more mobile, and then the traffic congestion can be reduced, and then there can be, so the road construction need to include how mobility of people can be managed better. And that is also related to how you make the policy for work from home, etc. If you do the work from home, then maybe the congestion may be changed. So there are different policy interventions which many countries are trying out and which are also needed. So it's just not the technology and the infrastructure, but also the policy is needed, and how people change their behavior, how people change their food waste reduction by reducing the food waste reduction, and by eating healthy, sustainable diet, the emission can be reduced. And all these are on the demand side, which means that people need to take action, but then enabled by the different technology access and the infrastructure investment. So these new infrastructure investment and technology are extremely important, which can make the need for gas also less, so that there is, with whatever gas is there, and making it more productive, more services can be produced and well-being can be produced. In the electricity sector, we have seen that by artificial intelligence, how the load can be managed in such a way so that there can be less load shedding. There can be, with the same electricity generated, how through artificial intelligence and technology integration and grid can be made more reliable. So there are several options which are actually more granular technology, involves many entrepreneurs, many new innovation, and many technology trained people, which can drive the energy system transition. So energy system transition not only means that gas needs to be replaced, yes, gas needs to be found a replacement, but still we can make gas, whatever gas is remaining, more productive so that it can have a little longer life than what we are thinking now. And so what we try to show also, that if we are operating the energy demand side, actually all sustainable development goals are satisfied much better compared to the energy supply side. So energy demand side, more technology, granular technology, more economic businesses, and better for all the sustainable development goals that's already we wrote in the IPCC report. So what we are saying is that there are three mega trends which are happening globally. One is how to make the economy more circular, so that waste reduction, and then how we can have a sharing economy, say public transit system, compact cities, multi-storied buildings, and also digitalization, how this can lead the industry revolution 4.0, where artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, distributed manufacturing like 3D printing, etc., and many blockchain applications will be needed. And these three can actually, sharing economy, say for example, ride sharing, all these things can be made possible through digitalization. So when I heard the ministers, I was so hopeful that Bangladesh is on the right track for making a transition, sustainable transition. So what I also want to say is that when we looked into the whole technology development, we see that Bangladesh actually not only has the gas as the only source, but its energy supply portfolio is actually much bigger when we looked into the new technology development. And we saw that there can be hydrogen, and gas can be, any gas-based economy can make a very smooth transition hydrogen, but the investment and the planning has to start from now. And Bangladesh has geothermal energy, and also geothermal, now with the new technology for using geothermal for heating and cooling purposes. Bangladesh has nuclear energy, which is also carbon free. And then if gas is converted to hydrogen, then there is no fossil fuel, no emission. So that's one of the important sustainable development goal of zero carbon can be easily achieved in Bangladesh with an appropriate demand side and supply side policy planning in the energy sector. So what we found is that we need new targets, new strategies, and coalition among the international cooperation. That's what we talked about in the IPCC report. And also, as we said, the minister also said how we can have public-private partnership, and also how the analytical community, how the academia can provide more research and development and knowledge to influence the development of the sustainable development. So what we tried to do is that we tried to see for Bangladesh, if we think in terms of 2041 goals and 21 Delta Plan also, 2100 Delta Plan, then by 2050, can Bangladesh become actually low carbon as well as meet all the goals that it has in its Vision 2041 and can it build towards 2100. And very interestingly, we found that basically Bangladesh can have a low carbon transition with high growth, economic growth rate of 7.20%, but its energy demand will definitely be rising. We know that it will be rising even if it is 8 times more than what it is today. Still, we find that the energy supply through different kind of new innovation, as I mentioned, the whole supply portfolio can be diversified. Gas can be used for hydrogen production, and by including all those supply side options, and in the demand side, how we make the energy more productive, per unit of energy more productive, then we can see that emission can be reduced, but we can increase our investment. Investment can increase, and also the share of modern renewables can be increased, and the energy efficiency improvement can be increased, and this complies with all the energy efficiency and renewable energy penetration targets of the country. And also what we try to show is that there are other alternative pathways also, but then it will not give you so much of investment as or so much of energy efficiency improvement as the low carbon transition pathways. And these are, we try to show in the graphically. So what we are trying to show is that, actually Bangladesh can start now the demonstration project of maybe blue and gray hydrogen, and then gradually get transformed to green hydrogen, and where it can be wind and solar. Given that wind and solar potential is not very high, that can be used for green hydrogen production. And that green hydrogen production can be stored in the whole network, gas network, which was created with the Petroleum Act of 1974, can now be used for storing hydrogen. So it's the same infrastructure, which actually costs in hydrogen economy, it is almost 70% of the cost. That can be used for hydrogen, and the gas can be used, and the renewables can be used. And then the transition of Bangladesh economy, we see that it can be to a high hydrogen economy. But it's just not one fuel we should be depending on. As I showed, there can be a portfolio of supply side options and the demand side options. So we are talking about how to have an energy system transition. And with that, we also tried to see that how the different abundant gas field can be used for geothermal energy to use for heating and cooling purposes. And we see that there is a huge potential for cooling and heating purposes, but not for direct power generation. We tried with some of the data from the abundant oils, and then the gas wells, and we found that what kind of technology, is it absorption chiller or heat-based cooling, or what kind of technology can be better for utilizing heat and for the cooling purposes. So what we are trying to say is that if we need the energy system transformation following the same sustainable development, genuine investment concept, then for human well-being, what we need is, we need a dynamic baseline preparation, for which we need a 3D spatial resolution database, which will be, which can be produced by now, given the technology and the institutional capacity that Bangladesh has, it is possible to do that. So this is something which is needed so that there can be an energy system transformation model can be prepared. And we tried to see that what are the priorities then we need to do. Data sharing, data harmonization, network of institutions we do need, and all these 10 things which we have identified and we have written in the white paper, we are showing that can strengthen the different sustainable development goals as well. And this result we are presenting based on the 2 volumes which are the papers from the researchers from Bangladesh. So what they are saying, and we made a meta-analysis and we came up with this conclusion. So what we need is then, as I showed, the energy-related database is very important to build right now to make it more digitally operationable and then can optimize. So basically what we are saying is that people ask whether there is enough capital or investment possible. We are just showing very simple number which we wrote in our last year's 10 Insights report from Future Earth, where we tried to show that the global stimulus package after the COVID-19, the global fund is 12 trillion US dollar. And for Paris compatible sustainable development pathway, we need only 1.4 trillion per year during the period 2020 to 2024. So it's only 10% of that is needed to make it possible. So global capital is available. We just need to make our cooperation building, international cooperation building appropriately and our own agenda for growth. So what is very important is the next few years are going to be very important for making the energy sector transition. We need appropriate infrastructure for the energy transformation, and we need new service provision system. As I said, say work from home, the e-commerce, all these things are going to be the energy saving technologies and service provision. So we need policies and incentives, we need public investment, and we need justice in transition so that no job loss or asset loss happens, and which highlights the role of geothermal and hydrogen and many other clean fuel for Bangladesh. So what I would like to say is that in one of the interview with Bonik Barta, once I said that what we really need is, make people more capable with this new innovation and new transformation which is needed. So we need to build human capital, and which can lead to more inclusive production, inclusive production process and inclusive economic growth process, and that will lead to the prosperous Bangladesh. And so what we have done in AIT now, as I completed my Bangabandhu chair position. So what I have done is with some fund raised from global partners, what I have started is a new research center, and where we are trying to build a research network for this region. And I'm keeping all the educational institutions with whom I worked as Bangabandhu chair from Bangladesh with us in AIT, so that we can work together and advance this energy transformation agenda better with the local capacity built for Bangladesh. And for that, what we are doing is that one new initiative we are starting. Actually, it's very interesting. It is even starting from today. Actually, I have created a multidisciplinary research team choosing the energy sector experts, young researchers from private and public universities in Bangladesh, and we will use open source energy modeling framework so that techno-economic optimum energy system solution for Bangladesh can be worked out by the experts in Bangladesh. So we are trying to build the capacity. We are doing it in 3 countries now, India, Bangladesh, and Thailand. So we have a team to work with, and I'm very happy. And if I can be of can make some contribution given my legacy of Bangabandhu Chair Professor at AIT, I'll consider that as my humble contribution to the whole effort. And my encouragement from this comes from the fact that for India, we tried to divide whole country into small pixels and tried to see where different kind of solar technology. It may be dual tracking, it may be single tracking, it may be fixed tilted, or it can be offshore and onshore wind, and how that can be built in which part. So we could come up with what it means for the transmission lines and how much demand can be met. We successfully published it, and so we are thinking that for Bangladesh also we can come up with this, and for Thailand, and this is a international group we are trying to build. And with these words, I will say that I got inspired by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's saying that I do not say anything to intellectuals, I respect them. I would only say to them that please use your intellect for the welfare of the people. If I can do little bit in this direction, I'll think to be blessed with all these what we have got as our intellect. Thank you very much, and I'll stop here now.
Thank you, and thank you, Professor Joyce Sriroy, for your very special speech in this session. I think all the people here, around 1,000, more than 1,000 people from different academia, industry, and government here, they have listened your address and they enjoyed your speeches. So, আপনাকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ। আপনাকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ বাংলাদেশ আওয়ামী লীগের বিজ্ঞান ও প্রযুক্তি বিষয়ক উপকমিটির পক্ষ থেকে আপনার এই সুন্দর প্রেজেন্টেশনের জন্য। আমরা আপনাকে আমাদের এখান থেকে আমাদের বিজ্ঞান ও প্রযুক্তি বিষয়ক উপকমিটি আপনাকে একটি সার্টিফিকেট অফ অ্যাপ্রিসিয়েশন আমরা আপনাকে এখানে একটু শো করতে চাই, এবং এটা আমরা পরবর্তীতে আপনার কাছে আমরা ইমেলের মাধ্যমে পৌঁছে দেবো। আপনাকে প্রফেসর অনেক ধন্যবাদ, অনেক ধন্যবাদ। এই সার্টিফিকেটটা আমরা ইমেলে আপনাকে পাঠিয়ে দেবো, সার্টিফিকেট অ্যাপ্রিসিয়েশন। ধন্যবাদ যারা এখানে উপস্থিত আছেন।
এখনকার সেশনে আমাদের মাননীয় প্রতিমন্ত্রী এবং আমাদের সম্মানিত অতিথি জয়শ্রী রায়, উনি সুন্দরভাবে প্রেজেন্টেশন দিলেন, আমরা তার কাছে কৃতজ্ঞ, এবং আমরা আশা করছি যে আগামী দিনগুলোতেও উনি আমাদের আওয়ামী লীগের বিজ্ঞান ও প্রযুক্তি বিষয়ক উপকমিটির যে সমস্ত সেমিনারগুলো হয় উনি মাঝে মাঝে আমাদের কন্ট্রিবিউট করবেন। আমরা আমাদের কমিটির পক্ষ থেকে তাই ধন্যবাদ। এবং আপনারা যারা বসে আছেন, আমি সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ দিচ্ছি যে অত্যন্ত ধৈর্য সহকারে আপনারা আমাদের এই দুইজন মাননীয় উপস্থাপকের, প্রবন্ধ উপস্থাপকের বক্তব্যগুলো সুন্দরভাবে আপনারা শুনছেন। আপনারা আশা করি সামনে মানে বিকালে যে সেশনগুলো আছে সেগুলোতে অংশগ্রহণ করবেন। আপনাদের সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ দিচ্ছি। গুড অ্যাপিটাইট।